and welcome back to another episode of International Immersion, a podcast where we seek to connect various peoples, cultures, and provide an environment where we can learn about each other and foster a more inclusive and open-minded environment. So for today's podcast, I have my good friend Scarlett on, and we thought it'd be interesting since we both have lived in China. She's from China and I'm from the US, but having lived in China, we thought it'd be interesting to talk about the differences between the Chinese cities we've been to and what we notice based on where we're from, me being a foreigner and her being a resident or citizen of China. So Scarlett, it's good to have you on tonight.
Thank you for having me, Sean.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So, it's kind of neat because we've both, you're from China and then I lived in China for nearly 4 years before I returned to the US. And, we've both traveled in China and we've been to many cities and we have different, perspectives on them. But I think there's a lot that we can talk about, and compare and contrast our opinions and thoughts about the cities that we've been to and, whatever else.
Yeah, right. So I know you've been to many cities in China. You definitely have different perspectives from what I have. Like as a Chinese resident, I was 100% made in China. So I spent my 30 years life in China in some of the major cities like Tianjin, Shanghai, and Xi'an. So I feel really I love all these cities, but I can tell these cities are very, very different. So we can talk a little bit on that.
And for sure. And just for the reference, I lived primarily in Hangzhou the entire time I was there, but I did travel to Shanghai many times. Went to Xi'an, went to Xining, went to Dunhuang, Xiamen, and where else? And Haikou and Sanya on Hainan. So all those cities were unique, and I definitely saw the differences and the different characteristics that define each city. So I think that'd be a good place for us to start, is just kind of breaking down the characteristics of these cities and showing people what to expect if they went there.
Yeah, right. So let's begin with my hometown.
Tianjin, which unfortunately I've not been to yet.
Oh, you haven't been to, and you haven't even explored Beijing.
I know, I've been all down the middle of China and parts of the south, but I've not been to the north or northeast yet.
Yeah, maybe you can come next year.
Hopefully next year, yes. Cross our fingers.
Let's see where the universe takes us.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I was born in that city, Tianjin. It's a coastal city next to Beijing. Mm-hmm. It only takes 30 minutes if you go from Beijing to Tianjin by the express train. So it's pretty large city. At the very beginning, I think it's one of the important port from China to the outside world. If you really go back in history, like 100 years ago, it was one of the important ports. So it was kind of, if you go and explore that city, you can see a lot of colonial buildings.
Oh, that's neat. They've maintained a lot of the colonial heritage from the last few centuries.
Yeah. It's right now that zone is called Wudadao. It's located in the middle, in the center part of the city, and it's very, very famous for tourism because you see different types of buildings.
Oh, that's really neat.
European style, different types of building, all cramped in that region. You can go and see the Italian style building, and there is a very, very big cathedral, very famous. Yeah, it was all in that district. So I love that part. And it's in center of the city, and and right now it's a kind of a CBD, and a lot of companies are there. So I used to work in that region.
Okay, so
a lot of fun if you go and walk.
Okay, that's neat. So it has definitely more of a architectural variety in terms of different types of buildings. How would you describe the characteristics? Is it more like, how would you define it? Like, every city has like a different feel to it in terms of the characteristics that define it. So it's definitely got this architectural diversity. What else? What other characteristics would you say define Tianjin?
Okay, I would say the city is pretty chill. It's a kind of laid back city. You can go and live there very comfortably, and they're not living in a very fast pace. People are relaxed and fun to talk with. And another thing is that it's one of Tianjin people are famous for like their talk show. It's like it's not like their talk show, but it's a kind of stand up arts. One of the traditional type of stand up arts originated from that city. It was in the Qing dynasty when people were there were like artists talking making jokes or talking on a bridge, and people are will be there, and it was a kind of art, and it's right now it's still famous for that art. And I don't know if you have ever seen that. I think it's called crosstalk or something in English.
I've heard of it. So you can say that Tianjin is famous for some of its comedy. It's comedic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Comedic
Yes.
aspects. That's neat.
I think the English word may be crosstalk because it takes like two people.
They have to like maintain a dialogue. That keeps like
Yeah, it takes
yeah.
two people. One of them is like giving all the puns, and another one is kind of a supportive role. So it's funny, and it's
You could
very
say like
popular.
you have an instigator and then the collaborator.
Yeah. So you can say that city is pretty chill. People are living in a slow pace, and also people are very mostly they're funny because they speak in strange dialect. It's more like
That's everywhere. That's everywhere.
yeah. But as a native Chinese, I often speak like Mandarin, very basic Mandarin if I go to other places in China. But sometimes when I talk on the phone with my family, with my parent, with my mom, people will listen to our conversation and start laughing because of my accent. It's not that they're making fun of it. It's just because it's so funny. The sounds are so funny to Chinese native speakers. Maybe you cannot get it, but for if you ask a southerner in China, they will say it's no Tianjin dog is so funny. I love that because
Okay.
they have kind of strange, right?
No.
So also they're people that are very humorous.
Okay. So you could say
Yeah.
humor is a huge defining point of Tianjin. So that's neat. Okay. So
Yeah, right.
architecture is unique. The humor is neat. Is there anything else you could talk about?
Um, so the architecture, I would say, let's go back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like unique. It's one of the characters. It's one of the, I think I would say a snapshot in history that many cities in China have that same type of colonial building. If you go explore in Shanghai and in Qingdao, you see
Yes.
this. You can see the same type of building, and it's always like the same type of thing. And they also reserve like a special region for that building to keep
Yeah.
it up.
Shanghai has like
Yeah,
the British
it's
section,
the
the
same
French
thing.
section. Yeah.
It's the same thing. So I think maybe in another city in Dalian, you can also spot that type of building too. And so other characteristics of that city, I would say mm, it's kind of overshadowed by Beijing.
Or I've
it's
heard people say it's Beijing's port city.
yes, right. That's the Chinese name of that city. Tianjin is the port of the empire of
Oh,
the
yeah.
emperor.
Makes
So it's
sense.
yeah. So it's kind of it's developing, but still Beijing is the biggest. Is the Beijing gets all this priority, and people there are living in a comparatively good life, but not really. If you want to really make money, you want to go to some other cities that is like
I see. Maybe
um,
more
yeah,
cosmopolitan. There's more like people
yeah.
up on the up and coming. I see. Okay.
So Tianjin is actually first tier. is one of the first tier cities, but they don't treat it as a first tier. It's like they're supporting everything. They're supporting Beijing and kind of surpass and overshadowed by this by Beijing. So a lot of Tianjin local they choose to go to work, choose to find a job in Beijing.
Oh, like you said, because I know they're very close together, so they actually could commute to and
They
from.
can commute or they can just live in Beijing. I used to work in Beijing. I used to work in Beijing for 2 years. Um, yeah, for better income, for better payment, of course. And if you find the same type of job in Tianjin, you can find a job, but they will pay you less. It's more like, yeah, it's not. It's more like a different economy. They just
And,
operate differently.
and that's what I've noticed in different places in China. Like you could just see the difference, like in what not how much you could earn versus how much you have to pay. Like the taxis that I took in every different city, the initial fare was different in each city. Like Hangzhou, where
Yeah.
I was at, it was like 11, but when I was in Xi'an, it was 5.5 yuan.
Yes, yeah, because China is really a very large, but very populated compared to
Yes.
the United States. So it's really,
Yeah.
really different. There are many, many different characters among the cities. So you can see people are different and the industries are different.
And the one thing I will say from a foreign perspective is that regardless of what city it is, what city it is, they're huge compared to cities here
Yeah,
in terms of
right.
population. Because you know some cities here have a few million. That's not a very big city in China. Most city, like Shanghai is 24 million, Beijing around the same, Chongqing similar. So it's like
Yeah.
here that's like what?
Right. Yeah. So everyone don't people don't really have too much resources to themselves. So it's more like you have to compete. It's very competitive in Chinese cities if you want to make a living or
I definitely saw that in my time over there. There's a lot of competition between people and businesses trying to get ahead of each other for sure. And then kind of comparing that because I was like I said I lived in Hangzhou for nearly 4 years consistently when I unless I was traveling somewhere else. And Hangzhou is really unique in that it's definitely a modern city, but they've definitely maintained some of the older aspects of it, especially around the West Lake district, which is absolutely amazing. And there's some market areas that are really nice, and it's just a very beautiful city. There's a lot of greenery. There's a lot of a lot of artificial you know islands and other things around West Lake, and it's just it's very relaxing. I love to take walks to the gardens or go around the lake. It's very neat, and then and it's like the lake. It's funny, like the north side and the east side, it's all the city. But if you go on the south and the west side, it's all foliage, and that was really neat to see. So it's really kind of neat seeing that. I just say it's a very diverse city, and there's something for everyone. Alibaba's got his headquarters
right.
there,
Yeah.
and you have a lot of startups, and there's a lot of economic activity going on, but they still have that very down to earth cultural and societal aspects that have been there for a long time. So I just find it's a very balanced city, and compared to Shanghai, I like Shanghai too. It's very cosmopolitan. There's a lot more going on there, but I prefer living in Hangzhou than actually in Shanghai. It's just I find that Hangzhou is a very balanced city, and a lot of Chinese and foreigners I talk to, they would agree with me. They think it's just Hangzhou is a very balanced place to live. Shanghai is cool. Go there for the weekend, party, do stuff, but I personally like Hangzhou more than Shanghai, just across the board. But it's a neat city, and I didn't spend 4 years there if I didn't like it.
Of course. I agree with you. Um, I have to say it's everyone feels the same way about Shanghai. It's more like a big hub for economy, for finance, for all kinds of industry. Do you know that Shanghai is an industrial? It's not totally a financial city. It's an industrial city. It's
Oh
more
yeah.
like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's a very manufacturing centered. So it's all there are a lot of factories in that place in that city, and you if you want to live in Shanghai, it costs you a little bit much compared to if you want to live in the same standard, under the same standard of living, you have to pay more because everything's just a little bit more expensive, maybe for everyone. So yeah, it's a very busy city and just too many people. Too many
Yeah,
people
my
everywhere.
favorite thing I learned was, I shouldn't say favorite, funniest thing, Ren Shan Ren Hai, people mountain, people
Oh,
mountain, people ocean.
like that. 人山人海, of course. So, have you ever tried those subways in Shanghai?
Oh, I tried subways in Hangzhou and
Oh,
Shanghai, other
in
places.
Shanghai,
You feel
yeah.
like a sardine in a can during rush hour. You're just literally like this, getting
You
scrunched up.
they're the lines, they have already built how many lines? I don't know, 10 or 13, 15 lines, but still you cannot help it. People are still having difficulties commuting because there's just too many
It
people.
even though the Shanghai subway is a very elaborate system, it's just the
Yeah,
population is so large, it's efficient.
yeah.
It's just not enough. It's still not enough.
It's still not enough. Especially with the cars on those roads, they also get congested
Yeah, yeah.
every day almost.
Ducha, they say traffic jam, ducha, traffic jams everywhere. But I find that was pretty common in most Chinese cities, and it was always interesting to see the differences in how people drive in each city. Like Hangzhou, people are pretty laid back, whereas other cities they're much crazier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just you just can't help it. There's just too many people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I spent 4 years in Shanghai, but I was in college. I went to the um, Maritime University in Shanghai. It's in Pudong district, so
oh yeah,
it's
hmm
really it takes 40 minutes for you to walk from my school to that tower
oh
to that
the
tower.
Pearl
Yeah,
Tower,
at the
yeah,
Pearl Tower. Yeah. So it was a beautiful place, but I didn't really go get a chance to explore that city that much as a visitor or traveler because I was like studying, but I really made many friends with the Shanghai people. Um, yeah, with those locals, I have classmates, I have friends who are Shanghai people, and they speak very differently. It's like
I have
in
noticed
Chinese.
that, like, when I try to
Yes.
speak Chinese to people, if they don't use standard Mandarin, sometimes I'm like, oh, okay, I don't understand most of
Yeah,
this at all.
yeah. It's at the very beginning, it's really hard when they're it's because China has diverse cultures and different cities speak different dialects. I think everyone feels the same, especially in my age. That was like 10 years ago. While we were in university, people speak differently, different dialects, and people from different parts of China all get gathered together and they speak different dialects, and it takes some time for them to adjust to
Yeah,
talking to each other, try to understand each other. For me, as I come from a northern part of China, northern city, so I don't understand a word of what they're saying.
yeah,
It
the
takes me.
dialects definitely differ even more if you go north to south. It's like the
Yeah,
Changjianghe, the
there's,
Yangtze,
there's
north
no
or south
way
of
that
the.
I can figure out because I speak like Mandarin, I speak in Tianjin dialect, but they have the same type of pronunciation. But if you're talking to local Shanghai people, there's no way that you understand it. And you need to get yourself immersed in that culture in order to understand their language. So that's the difference. I mean, in the United States, you just all speak English.
Yeah,
Some people speak Spanish.
we have different accents here. I wouldn't
You have different
you could
accents.
say maybe there are some dialects, but generally it's accents. And
Yeah,
even if you go to the UK or New Zealand or Australia, most of the time we can understand each other really no problem. There may be some contextual situations you may be like what, but it's not there's not as much diversity or. But whereas in
right.
China, it's just amazing the amount of dialects that vary from place to place. It's just unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. It's people speak differently. Is communication is big issue in China because we use different, let's say, dialects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In another city we've both been to, and you said you lived there for a couple of years, is Xi'an. and
Yeah,
in
I love that city.
Shaanxi province or more central China. And
Shanxi province.
yeah, and that's what I found interesting about Xi'an was that it was just it's very different. It's very unique in its own right because it's has so much history and cultural significance, and then it has it's a typical Chinese city, but unlike Shanghai or Hangzhou, it's not as modern. I mean, there's still it's modern buildings and everything, but there's just that more that's that aged feel to the city. The people there, it's just there's the Muslim quarter where you have a lot of the markets and everything. Well, there's so much of the history that's left. The Terracotta
Yeah.
Army is there. A lot of the emperor's tombs complexes are all there. So it's just there's a lot more. It's just I think richer in a way than other cities.
History, yes. I think Xi'an is one of the tourist destinations for foreigners. If you talk about China, you want to go visit Xi'an for its history. You can
Yes.
go terracotta warriors and people. It's a famous city, historical city. I was there for. I worked there. As it was like it was in not 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved to Xi'an and I started to work as an English teacher and teaching some kind of courses, and also I started a yoga house with a friend
Nice.
there. Yes, with my roommate. So what I love about Xi'an, one thing is food.
Oh yes.
I really put on a lot of weight when I was there. So the food is so. I think they try to manage to keep the traditional type of eating habits. So they also have. If you have been to the Muslim street, and you have yes, you may have tried all this
Me and my
food.
friends, we were there for literally a whole day, and we did nothing but stop, eat, stop at the
Eat.
next place and eat.
Yeah.
And I swear, by the time we were done, we were like, oh, we felt like we gained like 100 pounds because we had tried so many different kinds of food. We eaten whatever, all this stuff, and it was amazing. And it was really neat to see the diversity. There were tourists there, both Chinese and foreign tourists, but then you see the people from other parts of China, and they each have their own different styles and their own food. The foods that they've had, their traditional foods that they're catering to. Uh, it was just really neat, and then also seeing kind of the older stuff versus the newer stuff. It was just a really neat city in that, and you don't get that same experience in other Chinese cities.
Yes. So but I don't think it's a very famous, very popular tourist spot for Chinese people. Generally speaking, I mean, but yeah, because people are not very into all this historical stuff. You
I
don't have
know.
to. I mean, as not everyone are into historical stuff. I mean, as especially with the Chinese people, I live really near to Beijing, but I've never been to the Great Wall. So it's not a deal. It's not a big deal for us. So I've never been there. It's more like okay, it's something
Well,
history. Learn
just
it from
like yeah,
textbooks.
just like anything, if you go to it all the time, or if it's something you hear about all the time, it just becomes not that big of a deal. It's like you know,
Yeah.
if you go to the Great Wall again and again and again, the other, I just think it's just a wall,
It's such a lot. Yeah.
a
Uh,
cool wall, but eventually the grandeur and the interest starts to kind of decline.
yeah. Yeah. So we need distance in order
Yes.
to realize the value of that.
Yeah, it's like the longer you're away from something, or the less you have it, the more you want it, or the more you appreciate it. Because something like
Exactly.
whatever, if you have access to something all the time, the importance decreases because you don't have to do anything to get it, or you have to do, or only there's less you have to do.
Exactly.
And then, and I must say, like, and then when I went out to West China, this Dunhuang, which is in Gansu province, it's not a big city, but it's a very historical city on the old Silk Road. That was like night and day versus other cities. It wasn't as big; it was more small scale, and it's just much older. And it felt more like you were going back in time in a way,
Yeah.
and that was really neat because you don't get that, like I said, in most cities. Xi'an, you get that to an extent, but it's still very modern. But that far out west, that was a very unique experience. It's in the desert, so it was a neat place, and the food was very good because you have foods from the Xinjiang, Gansu, and other areas, and you have a pretty diverse group of people there as well. And also, one thing that as a foreigner, I got a lot of attention there because there were not many foreigners there. So I got a lot of looks, and I was like, just I.
Oh, you gotta get used to that in
Oh,
China.
I got very used to it, but like living in Hangzhou, people are used to foreigners there, so it's not as. But whenever I go to Westlake, especially during holidays, when people from other places came, that's when you got, oh my gosh, foreigner, 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 and you got a lot of attention. But among most of the local Hangzhouren, or the people, not so much. I mean, they still look at you, but it wouldn't be the same amount of attention as people who were from other places with less foreigners.
That's interesting point because it's funny because Western faces are so rare. We're basically indigenous nation, and most of the nations in China are local indigenous people. Yeah. So it's not like what you can have here in the United States or in Europe. People with different, coming from different racial backgrounds, they all live together. So it's not like that. But Chinese cities are very exclusive.
They're very homogeneous. They're very we're in the U.S. If you go to any city or even even larger towns, you'll see a much wider range of diversity. But I know there are 53 ethnic groups in China, but the Hanzu or the Han are by far the largest majority and the largest percentage of those.
They're actually 56.
That's right, 56. Thank you.
56. So with 55 minority groups, so they all live in their indigenous region for the most part, I think. So it's not like you don't see that much contrast in
there's
that.
Not as much like like you said there's not as much mixing going on. They're kind of more, they still in their traditional areas. That's very true. Yes.
Yeah, because a lot of them are still living in their own lifestyle that they have kind of inherited from their past generations, and they kind of live in their old traditional kind of lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really funny, and also if you think about it, people are really different because they speak differently. They have different kind of lifestyle too, and considering the large space in that country, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, and that's you can see that, and you can see that in each city, kind of with the people who are there. They're all very homogeneous, especially from a U.S. perspective. But you can also see kind of just the differences, pace of life. Maybe the affluence. Whether it's you can tell there's more economic activity versus less. You could definitely see that. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to a Chinese city as a foreigner, don't be surprised if you're the only person who looks like you is on the entire street. I mean, that's very common, and a lot of people get weirded out by that, but you're gonna have to accept it, and accept a lot of people like, oh, look, staring at you or looking at you. So, yeah, my favorite thing is sometimes people will come up and just take a picture, and I'll tell them in Chinese like, do you want a picture? And they'll be like, oh my gosh. It's like, just please ask me before you take a picture of me at random.
Yeah. It's funny. So, do you like, you mentioned there are other cities that you've been to?
Yes.
Oh, here's the question. Which city is your favorite?
I can't say I have a specific favorite. I would say when it comes to living life, my general favorite would be Hangzhou, because I find I've had the best quality of life living in Hangzhou versus all the cities. When it comes to like when it comes to a lot of other factors, I'd probably say my next favorite would be Xi'an, just because it's so diverse. There's so much history, and I like history, so I just find an affinity with Xi'an. But Dunhuang was also nice. Shanghai is really neat. It's a lot of cool things if you're into business or you want to do a startup. It's a great place to go. but I've also been to Xiamen. I really enjoyed Xiamen. It's different. It's a coastal town, but they definitely have some of the colonial heritage, especially one of the small
Yeah,
islands next to
yeah.
called Galangyu. They have all the colonial
Very
buildings,
good.
and that was really neat because I actually spent the
Wow.
night there with a couple of my buddies when we were traveling down there. We stayed at a hostel on the island. That was pretty neat. And and
Yeah,
then
that sounds like
the seafood in Xiamen was amazing, and Xiamen University was very unique. Really neat architecture, and so Xiamen was really nice. And then I've also been to Hainan, which is the island just south of China, close to Vietnam, and it was It's very much a tourist destination. So I went there with my girlfriend. We stayed at a resort there. It was very nice. A great place for a vacation. Not so much. There wasn't a lot to do, but it was great just to go relax, go on the beach, explore the area. It was nice. And then I've also climbed Yellow Mountain or Huangshan in Anhui province. And then I also climbed Huashan, which is outside of Xi'an.
Hmm.
Those are cool places. But the cities all have their unique charm, and it's interesting because I travel with my Chinese buddies, and it was always interesting when we talk about the places we go to, like we're doing now, talking about what I thought of it versus what they thought of it. Differences, similarities. Like, oh, I never thought about this, or oh, I never thought about it that way, just because of where we're from and how we intake the world around us.
Sure. Yeah, we may have different perspectives because of where we come from. I mean, it's funny when you are seeing the city from an outsider's view, and you may have some interesting perspectives. So yeah,
And I think that's really important because you may see things and you may have these perspectives and you take certain things away from it. But having someone from the same country or vice versa, you can get different perspectives that you yourself may not think about or even realize. And by sharing, that's how you can create a more holistic, picture of something. So, yeah, and there's no right way, wrong way. It's just people are intake things differently.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's people need to accept that and understand that. And I think if people do that more, they'll become more mentally healthy, and also they can appreciate more.
yeah, right.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've not been to Beijing. I know I've been in China 4 years, but not been to Beijing, so I can't really say it. But I've heard a lot about it, so I know there's a lot that can be said about Beijing. It's the capital, and there's definitely history, economic aspects, and many others. And then I'd really like to go up to northeast China. Maybe hit some of the cities up there, like Harbin. I heard is really nice, and then yeah, but and also I've been to Luoyang. I went to Luoyang last year, and that was it was kind of simple because I was only there literally a day and a half, so I didn't have much to do or time to do much. But it was a modern city, but I could see there was a lot of history, especially in the areas around Luoyang. I didn't get a chance to go to them, but it was it's one of the old imperial cities, so it's definitely a neat
It's
place.
it's another historical city.
Hmm.
Actually, it's like in the center of the nation. So if you go to cities in Henan district, Luoyang is in Henan district.
Hmm.
So I'll say that Henan is the origin of the Han culture.
No, yeah, because
And
it's on the
so
coast. It's just it kind of it's on the Yellow River.
yeah, right. Yeah. So it's there are a lot of if you go into the Chinese history or literature, you find figures, important figures and people from that region.
Hmm.
So yeah, very very important historical city. But because of the location, it's kind of hard, and it takes more money if you want to develop and invest and do some business in that place. But yeah,
Yeah, because the first few dynasties kind of originated in that
yeah,
general area,
yeah.
the Xia, then the Shang and the Zhou. So
Right.
yeah, but there's so many other cities. I've heard. I have a friend from Chongqing, and she said it's just it's very large, it's very cosmopolitan, and very up and coming.
You like the hot pot there in Chongqing.
Yes, Chongqing, the hot pot and the food there I heard is very famous. And if people don't know what hot pot is, it's like it's awesome. All I can say it's awesome. It's and then Chinese barbecue or shaokao as they call it is also very good.
Oh, I
So
miss that so much.
yes, and it was always cool because every city I went to, I had the barbecue. I remember in Loyang, we got in really late because we took a fast train from Shanghai to Loyang. It took us 6 hours. It was a pretty cool ride. We got there around midnight, and we got to our hotel, and I'm like, I haven't had dinner yet, so I went out and got a barbecue, and I got a lot of looks like, there's a foreigner walking around. Then I go in and start talking Chinese, and they're like, what? But I had some lamb, I had some beef, and I had some eggplant and some other vegetables. It was really good. I really do miss, and that was kind of cool because the barbecue and a lot of foods they can be standard across the cities, just like in the U.S. But each place has their own signature dishes, which were really good.
Yeah, and with the barbecues, we have barbecues, Chinese barbecues everywhere, but they have different sauces. They make
Yes,
yeah, they make different. They cook differently. So, um, that's a part of the local culture if you want to see, and you can taste the different type of sauce they put on their barbecue. And in the hot pot, they use different ingredients in the recipe, and it's funny.
yes, and I think
Try
that's
and
one
I think
really important thing that people need to understand when they go to different cities. You need to try the different types of food there because it's a window into that place or city or wherever you're going. And I met so many people, Chinese, foreigners, etc. They go to places, they wouldn't try a lot of food. Nope, I can't eat that. Nope, I can't eat that. Well, how about you try? And it's just kind of sad because, yeah, I mean, don't do anything dangerous. Don't eat anything that may, harm you or, or worse. But, as they say, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Whenever you go to some place, you need to put your biases or put, some of your things that you think are however you want to describe it. You need to kind of set those aside and say, okay, I'm in a different place. The traditions and customs that I follow back home don't really apply here or don't apply in the same way. So that was my take on it. I go here, I'll try the food, I'll try all these different things because I'm here.
yeah,
They're still right and they're still wrong, but just try new things and food is one of the biggest ways to learn about a place.
that's a very healthy mindset.
I know it's
Yeah.
just so sad to see how many people don't do that.
But yeah, especially with the food, if you're talking about food culture, in every nation in Asia, almost every Asian countries they have special food culture in a very different way. So it's just it worth it, at least it worth it for you to take to just taste it and experience the culture.
For
So it's
sure.
not like yeah. So Asian cultures are basically about food culture. Chinese culture is basically food culture. So
Pretty much anywhere you go, you have to eat. That's and
yeah,
but
it's
that's
very
and
very important. It's one of the most important thing for you to eat in China. To think about what you want to eat and to cook. So we make big deal back in China in terms of food, in terms of dinner. And what do you want to eat for dinner? It's a pretty big thing um, for a family housewife to think about, and for a whole family to think about, and we just attach great importance to that.
it's
So,
not surprising that so many cultures around the world place so much importance on food, and and by in every individual city that you go to, you'll see that culture, playing out in a unique way because of what's around that city and the history of that city. So very well said, and I completely agree with you. But no, I mean, yeah, my family's Italian, and you come to one of our family's houses, you're not leaving the house without eating something.
nice.
So that's a neat thing, and I think it really definitely warms a lot of people's hearts. Like, oh my gosh, that's so nice that they do that. But yeah, so and Scarlett, we could talk forever about the cities in China and elsewhere, but kind of going through like Tianjin, Hangzhou, Xi'an, Dunhuang, Luoyang, Xiamen, Hainan, Beijing, and others. I think there's just so much, and there's so many more we could talk about. But I think we just want to kind of give a little bit of a bit of a taste of just each city and that cities we've been to or places you've been and I haven't, and vice versa. There's just so much diversity and there's so many things you can uncover if you actually go there. As long as you're willing to, you know, take the plunge, have an open mind, and make the most of your time in each place.
Yes.
Well, Scarlett, I really appreciate you joining me tonight. I'm sure we'll be back to discuss more topics here in the near future. So, you know, this has been another episode of International Immersion. Please let us know if you have any questions or send us content you would like us to cover at internationalimmersionpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, travel on and let's hope that Corona disappears soon so we can get back out and travel and explore the world.
Yeah. So thank you for having me. I'm very happy.
You're welcome, Scarlett. And great to see you, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you.
Good, 41 minutes. And stop.
What do you think?
Not bad. And